The Russian bear, once a symbol of unyielding strength, now limps through the killing fields, its roar reduced to a whimper. Its once mighty claws are blunted, its teeth dulled. The mighty arsenal now stands depleted, a hollow shell of its former glory. This is the story of Russia's struggle, grappling with the ghosts of its past and the harsh realities of the present. A nation, blinded by hubris, finds itself teetering on the brink. To understand Russia's current predicament, one must delve into its history. For centuries, Russia has pursued power and influence, shaping its destiny. From the Tsars to the Soviet Union, Russia sought dominance. Peter the Great transformed Russia into a European power. His quest for a warm water port led to St. Petersburg. Catherine the Great further expanded Russia's influence. The Soviet Union rose as a superpower through revolution and war. Stalin's brutal industrialization made the USSR a military power. The Red Army symbolized Soviet might during World War II. The Soviet Union's collapse in 1991 was a turning point. The empire lay in ruins, its military in disarray. Yet the embers of its imperial past continued to smolder. Under Putin, Russia sought to reclaim its lost glory. The Soviet Union's collapse revealed a stark truth. The mighty military machine, for all its outward displays of power, was riddled with inefficiencies and corruption. The once vaunted Red Army, plagued by low morale, outdated equipment, and a bloated bureaucracy, proved ill-prepared for the complexities of modern warfare. The seeds of Russia's current predicament were sown in those waning days of the Soviet era. While the West modernized its military doctrines and embraced new technologies, the Soviet Union remained tethered to outdated tactics and equipment. The vast military-industrial complex, once the engine of Soviet power, became a breeding ground for complacency and stagnation. Innovation was stifled, quality sacrificed for quantity, and corruption flourished in the shadows of the Iron Curtain. The collapse of the Soviet Union left Russia with a crumbling military infrastructure and a depleted treasury. The once mighty armed forces faced a stark choice: adapt or decline. Unfortunately, the allure of past glories proved too strong, and Russia's leadership clung to the illusion of its former might, failing to grasp the fundamental changes sweeping the globe. Instead of investing in modernization and restructuring, Russia's leaders opted for a strategy of maintaining the facade of military strength while neglecting the crucial underpinnings of a modern fighting force. This short-sighted approach, driven by a potent mix of pride and delusion, would come to haunt Russia in the years to come. Under Vladimir Putin, Russia embarked on a carefully crafted campaign to project an image of resurgent military power. Grand military parades showcased gleaming new weapons systems, while state-controlled media trumpeted Russia's military prowess, feeding a narrative of national revival and striking fear into the hearts of its adversaries. However, behind this carefully constructed facade lay a far more troubling reality. The truth was that Russia's military modernization efforts were largely superficial, focusing on high-profile projects designed to grab headlines rather than addressing the systemic weaknesses that plagued its armed forces. While new tanks and fighter jets rolled off the assembly lines, they often lacked the advanced technology and sophisticated capabilities of their Western counterparts. The emphasis on outward appearances masked a chronic underinvestment in crucial areas such as logistics, training, and communications. Russia's military exercises, often touted as proof of its combat readiness, were meticulously choreographed events designed to impress foreign observers rather than realistic simulations of modern warfare. This culture of smoke and mirrors permeated every level of the Russian military, creating a dangerous disconnect between perception and reality. While the world marveled at Russia's apparent resurgence, the cracks in its military facade were growing wider by the day. The stage was set for a rude awakening. The rise of the oligarchs in the aftermath of the Soviet Union's collapse had a profound impact on Russia's military-industrial complex. Driven by insatiable greed and a sense of impunity, these newly minted billionaires saw the once proud institutions of the Soviet military as ripe for plunder. National pride took a backseat to personal enrichment as the oligarchs tightened their grip on Russia's defense industry. Factories that once churned out tanks and fighter jets were stripped of their assets, their skilled workforce scattered to the winds. State-of-the-art technology was sold off to the highest bidder, often ending up in the hands of Russia's geopolitical rivals. The once formidable Soviet military machine was being cannibalized from within, its carcass picked clean by a small cadre of unscrupulous individuals. The consequences of this rampant corruption were devastating for Russia's military capabilities. Weapons systems were plagued by shoddy workmanship and substandard materials, their effectiveness compromised by the oligarchs' insatiable greed. The once feared Russian bear was being fitted with paper claws and teeth, its roar reduced to a hollow growl. The rot within Russia's defense industry was a symptom of a larger malaise afflicting the nation, a toxic mix of corruption, cronyism, and a disregard for the rule of law. The very foundations of the Russian state were being eroded, leaving it vulnerable to both internal and external threats. The seeds of Russia's current predicament were sown in this era of unchecked greed and national decline. For years, the Russian people were fed a steady diet of propaganda, led to believe that their nation was on the rise, its military might restored to its former glory. The truth, however, was far more unsettling. The price of Russia's pursuit of imperial ambitions was a nation drained of its resources, its people burdened by economic hardship and a pervasive sense of disillusionment. While the Kremlin poured billions into showcase weapons programs and costly foreign adventures, the Russian people struggled to make ends meet. Education and healthcare systems crumbled, infrastructure decayed, and the gap between the rich and poor widened into a chasm. The social contract upon which the Russian state was built was fraying at the seams. The human cost of Russia's misguided priorities was immeasurable. The best and brightest minds fled the country, seeking opportunities and a future denied to them in their homeland. The once proud Russian education system, once a beacon of scientific and technological innovation, was relegated to producing a generation ill-equipped for the challenges of the 21st century. The illusion of Russia's resurgence was built on a foundation of lies and deception. Its cost measured in squandered potential, shattered dreams, and a nation teetering on the brink of a demographic and economic abyss. The stage was set for a reckoning, a moment when the true cost of Russia's hubris would be laid bare for all to see. Across the vast expanse of Russia, from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean, a series of infernos illuminate the night sky, casting an eerie glow on the Kremlin's ambitions. These are not accidental fires. They are targeted strikes against the very lifeblood of Russia's war machine, its oil depots. Each explosion, a deafening roar of defiance, lays bare the vulnerabilities of a nation struggling to sustain its aggression. The pungent smell of burning fuel, acrid and suffocating, hangs heavy in the air, a grim testament to the dwindling resources of a once mighty energy superpower. The flames, reaching towards the heavens, consume millions of gallons of oil, fuel that was meant to power tanks, fuel jets, and fuel the Kremlin's dreams of imperial grandeur. Now it fuels only destruction and despair. These attacks, daring and precise, expose the fragility of Russia's logistical backbone. The Kremlin, once boasting of its ability to wage war for years, finds itself hampered by dwindling fuel reserves, its supply lines stretched thin and vulnerable. The consequences are dire, forcing Russia to scale back its offensive operations, its once relentless advance now reduced to a sputtering crawl. With each passing day, the flames grow higher, consuming not only oil, but also Russia's carefully crafted image of invincibility. The world watches in astonishment as the bear, wounded and bleeding, is forced to confront the limits of its own strength. A thirst unquenched, the crippling cost of dependence. For decades, Russia wielded its vast energy resources like a weapon, using its oil and gas exports to exert influence, punish adversaries, and enrich its ruling elite. It was a strategy born of both necessity and arrogance, a belief that the world's dependence on Russian energy gave the Kremlin a free hand to act with impunity. Now, that arrogance is coming back to haunt them. The sanctions imposed by the West, a direct response to Russia's aggression, have struck at the heart of its energy sector. Once lucrative markets have evaporated, pipelines lie dormant, and the flow of petrodollars, the lifeblood of the Russian economy, has slowed to a trickle. The Kremlin, long accustomed to using its energy wealth as a shield, now finds itself exposed and vulnerable. The consequences of this self-inflicted wound are reverberating throughout Russian society. The ruble, once a symbol of national pride, has plummeted in value, eroding the savings of ordinary citizens. Inflation is soaring, shortages are becoming commonplace, and the specter of economic collapse looms large. The Kremlin's gamble, its belief that it could withstand the economic pressure from the West, has backfired spectacularly. The Russian people, long told that they were immune to the consequences of their leader's actions, are now paying the price for his hubris. The ghost of Grozny, echoes of past mistakes. As the flames engulf Russia's oil depots, they also illuminate a haunting truth. The Kremlin has learned little from its past military blunders. The ghost of Grozny, the Chechen capital reduced to rubble during Russia's brutal war in the 1990s, hangs heavy over the current conflict. In Grozny, as in Ukraine, Russia relied on overwhelming firepower, indiscriminate bombing, and a callous disregard for civilian casualties. It was a strategy that achieved a Pyrrhic victory, leaving Grozny in ruins and sowing the seeds of lasting resentment among the Chechen people. Today, the same tactics are being employed in Ukraine, with similarly devastating results. Cities lie in ruins, millions have been displaced, and the death toll mounts with each passing day. The Kremlin, seemingly oblivious to the lessons of history, seems intent on repeating the mistakes of the past. The world watches in horror as the cycle of violence repeats itself, the echoes of Grozny reverberating through the streets of Mariupol, Kharkiv, and Kiev. The human cost of Russia's aggression is immeasurable, a stain on the conscience of humanity. A nation held hostage, the oligarchs' iron grip. While the Russian people bear the brunt of the economic hardship and the human cost of the conflict, the oligarchs, the true beneficiaries of Putin's regime, remain largely insulated from the pain. Their vast fortunes, stashed away in offshore accounts and luxury properties around the globe, are secure, their opulent lifestyles untouched by the suffering of their fellow citizens. These individuals, once hailed as captains of industry, are now seen for what they truly are: parasites enriching themselves at the expense of their nation. Their grip on the levers of power, their influence over the media, and their control over vast swaths of the Russian economy have allowed them to amass unimaginable wealth, while ordinary Russians struggle to put food on the table. The sanctions imposed by the West, while targeting some of these oligarchs, have done little to loosen their grip on power. Their yachts may be seized, their mansions may be frozen, but their money continues to flow, propping up the very regime that is responsible for so much suffering. The Russian people are held hostage by a corrupt system, their voices silenced, their futures mortgaged to the greed of a select few. Until this system is dismantled, until the oligarchs are held accountable for their actions, Russia will remain trapped in a cycle of corruption, aggression, and decline. Shadows in the sky, the missing might of drones. The 21st century battlefield is defined by technology, a lethal chess game where drones are the new queens. Silent, deadly, and ever watchful, they have revolutionized modern warfare. Yet, on the killing fields of Ukraine, Russia's drone presence is a whisper. This absence speaks volumes about technological shortcomings and deeper rot within Russia's military. The Kremlin poured vast sums into developing its drone program, promising a new generation of unmanned aerial vehicles. Propaganda videos showcased sleek prototypes, bristling with weaponry. Yet, reality proved a harsh mistress. The drones that Russia did deploy were crude, easily outmatched by their Ukrainian counterparts. Many were shot down, their wreckage a testament to the Kremlin's empty boasts. The Russian drone program stood exposed as a costly sham. This lack of drone capability has had a profound impact on the battlefield. Deprived of the eyes in the sky, Russian forces are fighting blind. The consequences are measured in lost lives and wasted resources. Empty factories, empty promises, the ammunition drought. The thunder of artillery has always been the soundtrack to war, a brutal symphony of destruction. But for Russia, the music is fading, the once relentless barrage now reduced to a sporadic drumbeat. A crippling shortage of ammunition, a crisis that lays bare the hollow core of Russia's military-industrial complex, consumed by the insatiable hunger of the conflict in Ukraine, crippled by sanctions, mismanagement, and corruption. The consequences are being felt on every front line. Tanks and armored vehicles, starved of vital supplies, sit idle. Stalled production lines, a grim reality check for the bear. The Kremlin's propaganda machine churns out images of sleek new tanks and missiles. But behind this facade lies a troubling reality. Russia's defense industry, starved of components and crippled by sanctions, struggles. Production lines have fallen silent. Skilled workers are fleeing the country. The flow of essential components has slowed to a trickle. Russia's ability to replenish its stockpiles is compromised. The Armata tank exists only in limited numbers. The Su-57 fighter jet is plagued by delays and glitches. This reality contrasts with the Kremlin's boasts of military superiority. The war in Ukraine exposes the limitations of Russia's defense industry. It is a sobering reality check for a nation clinging to the illusion of invincibility. The West's arsenal, a stark contrast to Russia's plight. While Russia's military machine sputters and stalls, starved of resources and crippled by its own internal contradictions, the West's support for Ukraine has only intensified. Advanced weapon systems, once deemed too sensitive to provide, are now flowing across the border, bolstering Ukraine's defenses and shifting the balance of power on the battlefield. Javelin anti-tank missiles, Stinger anti-aircraft systems, HIMARS rocket launchers. These are just some of the weapons that have become synonymous with Ukraine's fierce resistance. Provided by the United States, the United Kingdom and other NATO allies, these systems have inflicted heavy losses on Russian forces, turning the tide of the war and exposing the vulnerabilities of Russia's once feared military. But the West's support goes beyond providing weapons. Intelligence sharing, logistical support and financial assistance are all playing a crucial role in sustaining Ukraine's war effort. The West's resolve, once questioned by some, has hardened in the face of Russia's aggression, driven by a recognition that the stakes extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine. This unwavering support stands in stark contrast to Russia's isolation on the world stage. Sanctioned by much of the global community, its economy in tatters, its military bogged down in a protracted and costly conflict, Russia finds itself increasingly isolated, its ambitions thwarted, its future uncertain. Grounded eagles, the sad state of Russia's jet fighters. The skies above Ukraine were meant to be Russia's domain, a spectacle of aerial dominance. The Sukhoi and MiG fighters were to rule the heavens. Yet the reality is far different, one of grounded eagles. The much-vaunted Russian aerospace forces have been strangely absent. Their sorties are few, their impact muted. What was meant to be overwhelming air power is now technological stagnation. The skies above Ukraine are now contested, a dangerous no man's land. The days of flying with impunity are over. The Russian bear now cowers in the face of a determined opponent. Ghosts of dogfights past, from Top Guns to sitting ducks. Russian aviation history is filled with daring pilots and legendary dogfights. Now, Russian pilots are reduced to glorified bus drivers, fearful of straying too far. Once feared, Russian pilots are now outmatched by their Ukrainian counterparts. The Russian aerospace forces are now a pale shadow of their former selves. The spare parts dilemma. Modern fighter jets require constant maintenance and a steady stream of spare parts. For Russia's Air Force, this lifeline has been severed by sanctions and corruption. Sanctions have devastated Russia's defense industry, halting the flow of high-tech components, microchips, semiconductors, avionics systems, all in short supply. Years of corruption have hollowed out Russia's domestic defense industry. Spare parts are in short supply, maintenance schedules in disarray. Grounded jets, once symbols of might, now sit idle. The Russian aerospace forces, starved of supplies, is grinding to a halt. Section 4, Western Skies, the growing technological divide. While Russia's Air Force struggles to keep its aging fleet airborne, the West continues to push the boundaries of military aviation. The gap between the West and Russia is widening. The United States, with its unmatched military budget and its network of cutting-edge defense contractors, the F-35 Lightning II, a fifth-generation stealth fighter, the F-22 Raptor continues to dominate the skies. European nations are also developing advanced fighter jets. The technological gap between the West and Russia is not limited to fighter jets. This technological superiority has been on full display in Ukraine. Russia now finds itself falling behind. This disparity in military capabilities has serious implications for Russia's ability to project power. The erosion of Russia's fighting force. An army, they say, marches on its stomach. But what happens when that army is forced to march on empty promises? This is the crisis engulfing Russia's military today. The once feared Russian soldier now stands diminished, a hollowed-out shell of his former self. Gone is the steely-eyed resolve of the Red Army soldier. In his place stands a conscript, often ill-equipped and poorly trained. The propaganda machine may churn out tales of heroism, but on the battlefields, a different story unfolds. Section 2. Ghosts of Wars Past, from Afghan echoes to Chechen scars. The ghosts of Russia's past wars loom large over the current conflict in Ukraine. From Afghanistan to Grozny, the echoes of past mistakes reverberate. The war in Ukraine evokes painful memories of the Soviet-Afghan War. A superpower bogged down, its military might blunted by fierce resistance. The Chechen wars cast an even darker shadow over the current conflict. The brutality in Grozny, indiscriminate shelling, torture, extrajudicial killings, a chilling reminder of the dark potential within the Russian military. These ghosts haunt both the older generation and young soldiers today. Section 3. A generation lost. The demographic drought. Russia's military crisis reflects a deeper demographic issue, a shrinking pool of manpower. Decades of low birth rates, high mortality, and emigration have led to a population decline. The military struggles to find qualified recruits, impacting its effectiveness. Lower standards for recruits have led to decreased combat effectiveness and morale. Section 4. The Price of Lies. Disillusionment on the front lines. The Kremlin's elaborate web of propaganda is unraveling on the battlefields of Ukraine. The reality of the conflict has shattered the carefully constructed illusion, leaving many Russian soldiers questioning everything. The initial wave of patriotic fervor has given way to a cold realization. They are invaders, fighting in a war they do not understand. The promises of a swift victory have proven hollow, replaced by the grim reality of a protracted conflict. The stories from the front lines paint a grim picture of a demoralized campaign. Soldiers, ill-equipped and poorly led, are left to fend for themselves, their pleas ignored by a callous chain of command. The lucky ones are captured and treated with humanity. The unlucky ones return home in body bags, their sacrifices dismissed as the necessary price of war. This disillusionment is spreading through Russian society, fueled by social media and independent news. The Kremlin's propaganda machine is struggling to keep pace with the torrent of bad news. The price of lies is steep, measured in lost lives and shattered dreams. The consequences of this moral bankruptcy will continue to reverberate long after the guns have fallen silent. The price of unchecked ambition. Russia, haunted by its imperial past, stands on a precipice of its own making. Blinded by ambition, it sacrifices its present for a hollow vision of restored glory. The cost is etched on the faces of its people, a tableau of suffering and uncertainty. The once mighty Russian military lies broken and depleted. Its tanks smolder on the battlefield, crippled by Western weapons. Fighter jets are grounded, pilots hesitant to challenge lethal skies. The Russian bear, starved of resources, is exposed as a paper tiger. The true cost extends far beyond the battlefield. The economy, crippled by sanctions, teeters on the brink. The Russian people, fed lies, awaken to harsh realities. This is the price of unchecked ambition, a cautionary tale for the world where the pursuit of power leads to ruin. Can the bear rise again? As the sun sets on Russia's imperial ambitions, casting long shadows across Ukraine, a single question hangs heavy. What next for the wounded bear? Will it continue its descent into isolation and decline, consumed by its own internal contradictions? Or can it find a path to redemption, emerging from the ashes a stronger nation? The answer remains shrouded in uncertainty. The path ahead is fraught with peril, littered with past mistakes. The temptation to double down on aggression will be strong, yet such a path offers only the illusion of strength. The true test lies in self-reflection and confronting uncomfortable truths. It requires acknowledging the pain inflicted on its neighbors. The world watches, waits, and hopes the bear can find its way back, not as a predator, but as a responsible member of the community of nations.